They forced Alara Ashford to marry the Vampire King in 72 hours because they believed she was dying, worthless, a burden not worth keeping. But when King Caspian discovered the secret her heart had been hiding, everything changed. In 90 days, she went from sacrificial lamb to the healer queen, revered across an entire kingdom. This is how she turned poison into power. The clock in Ashford Manor's grand ballroom struck 8. Each chime echoed through marble halls like a death knell. Alara stood at the top of the curved staircase, one hand gripping the banister. Not for elegance, for survival. Her heart fluttered against her ribs, a trapped bird throwing itself against cage bars. The medication hadn't worked this morning. Or maybe it had worked too well. She could never tell anymore. Below, 200 guests in silk and diamonds pretended not to stare. They always pretended. Alara had learned to read the language of averted eyes. The way conversation dimmed when she entered a room. The careful distance people maintained, as if weakness might be contagious. As if her failing heart might somehow infect their perfect, beating ones. Her stepmother stood at the bottom of the stairs. Morgana Ashford wore emerald velvet that matched her eyes and matched her ambition. 45 years old and beautiful in the way of women who knew exactly how much their beauty cost and considered it an investment. Her smile was champagne bright. Her gaze was winter cold. "There she is," Morgana announced, voice carrying across the ballroom like a song. "My dear stepdaughter, come down, darling. We have such wonderful news." Alara's fingers tightened on the banister. Wonderful news from Morgana meant catastrophe. It always did. She descended anyway, one step, another. Her heart hammering out its irregular rhythm. The gray dress she wore had been her mother's once, before her mother died, before her father remarried, before everything went wrong. The fabric hung loose now. Alara had lost weight these past 2 years. The medication, the doctor said. Side effects, they said. Lies she was beginning to suspect. At the bottom of the stairs, Vivian waited. Alara's stepsister was 3 years older and knew it showed in all the right ways. Where Alara was pale and thin, Vivian glowed with health. Where Alara's dark hair hung limp, Vivian's golden curls caught chandelier light like treasure. She wore rose silk and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Poor Alara," Vivian murmured, just loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "You look so tired." "I am," Alara said simply, because honesty was the only weapon she had left. Morgana clapped her hands. The sound cut through the murmuring crowd like a blade through silk. "Friends, family, honored guests." Morgana's voice rang out. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. I know you're all wondering why I've gathered you here tonight." Alara wasn't wondering. She was calculating, counting exits, measuring distances. Her heart beat too fast, then too slow, then skipped entirely. "As you know," Morgana continued, "my stepdaughter has been unwell for some time. Her heart is weak. The doctors have done all they can." A lie wrapped in truth. The doctors had done exactly what Morgana paid them to do. "We've exhausted every option," Morgana said, and she almost sounded sad. "Almost. Every treatment, every specialist. The prognosis is grim." Alara watched faces in the crowd. Some showed pity. Most showed relief that tragedy was happening to someone else's family. "But," Morgana's smile widened, "there is one hope remaining, one possibility we had not considered." Vivian's hand found Alara's elbow. Her grip was iron-wrapped in silk. "The Vampire King of Nightfall has agreed to accept a bride," Morgana announced. The ballroom went silent. Someone dropped a glass. Crystal shattered on marble. No one moved to clean it. "King Caspian Devereaux," Morgana continued, "has made it known that he seeks a human wife, a gesture of goodwill between our peoples, a symbol of peace." She paused, letting the words settle like snow. "And he has agreed to accept Alara." The silence broke. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Whispers hissed like wind through dead leaves. 72 hours from now," Morgana said, "Alara will travel to Nightfall Castle. She will marry the Vampire King, and perhaps," her voice caught, perfectly timed, perfectly false, "perhaps his ancient magic will heal what our medicine cannot." Alara's vision narrowed. The ballroom tilted. No, not magic, not healing. Sacrifice. Everyone knew what happened to human brides sent to vampires. Everyone knew, and no one spoke of it. The stories were old as winter, dark as graves. Brides went to Nightfall Castle. Brides did not return. "You're sending me to D," Alara said. "Boss said." Her voice should have been too quiet to carry, but the ballroom had gone so silent that her words reached every corner. Morgana's smile never faltered. I'm sending you to the only hope you have left. Liar. The word dropped like a stone into still water. Morgana's eyes flashed, just for a moment, just long enough for Alara to see the truth beneath the performance. How dare you, Morgana whispered. How dare I? Alara felt laughter building in her chest, hysterical and sharp. How dare I refuse to die quietly? How dare I name this for what it is? Vivian's grip on her elbow tightened. Alara, don't make a scene. Why not? Alara turned to face the crowd. 200 faces stared back. 200 witnesses. You're all here to watch anyway. Might as well give you a show. Alara, Morgana's voice carried a warning. Tell them the truth, Alara demanded. Tell them what happens when I die at nightfall. Tell them about Father's will, about the inheritance. Morgana went very still. Tell them, Alara pressed, that if I die unmarried, everything goes to you. The estate, the fortune, everything my mother left me, everything my father wanted me to have. You're hysterical, Morgana said. The illness has affected your mind. Has it? Alara looked at the crowd. Or have the medications you've been giving me affected it instead? A murmur ran through the ballroom. That's enough. Morgana's voice cracked like a whip. You will go to your room. You will rest. And in 72 hours, you will fulfill your duty to this family. My duty? Alara laughed, and the sound was broken glass. My duty is to die so you can steal what's mine? Morgana moved fast. Her hand connected with Alara's cheek. The slap echoed through the ballroom. Alara tasted blood. Ungrateful child, Morgana hissed. I have given you everything. A home, care, the best doctors money can buy. Doctors you paid to keep me weak, Alara said. Blood traced her lip. She didn't wipe it away. Let them see. Let them all see. Medications that made me worse, not better. How long, Morgana? How long have you been poisoning me? You're mad. Am I? Alara felt something like crack inside her chest, not her heart, something deeper. Then prove it. Let me see a doctor not chosen by you. Let me have my blood tested by someone you haven't bought. Morgana's face went cold. Guards. 2 men in Ashford livery stepped forward. Escort Miss Alara to her room, Morgana ordered. She's clearly unwell. The excitement has been too much for her fragile constitution. The guards took Alara's arms, gentle but firm. She didn't fight. There was no point. Not here. Not now. But as they led her from the ballroom, she looked back. 200 faces watched her go. 200 witnesses to her condemnation. And not one of them would help. The doctor arrived an hour before midnight. Alara heard his footsteps in the hallway. Slow, hesitant. Not the confident stride of Dr. Thorne, Morgana's pet physician. Someone else. Her bedroom door opened. The man who entered was elderly, perhaps 75, with snow-white hair and hands that trembled slightly. He carried a leather medical bag, worn soft with decades of use. Miss Ashford, he said quietly. Alara sat up in bed. Who are you? Dr. Marcus Webb. He set his bag on the bedside table. I was your father's physician. Before Morgana, before everything changed. She sent you? Alara asked. She doesn't know I'm here. Dr. Webb pulled a chair close to the bed. His hands shook harder now. I heard what you said tonight, about the medications, about being poisoned. Hope flared in Alara's chest, dangerous, painful. And? She whispered. Dr. Webb reached into his bag, pulled out a file, worn manila stuffed with papers. I've been your physician's consulting doctor for the past 2 years, he said. They sent me your charts, your test results, your medication regimens. He paused. I should have spoken sooner. I should have said something when I first noticed. But I'm an old man, and old men get scared of powerful women. Notice what, doctor? Webb opened the file, showed her pages of numbers and medical terminology she didn't understand. Your heart condition is real, and he said, but it shouldn't be this severe. Not at your age, not without additional factors. What additional factors? Digitalis, Dr. Webb said quietly. Do you know what that is? Alara shook her head. It's a medication extracted from foxglove plants. In small doses, it regulates heartbeat. In larger doses, he trailed off. It's been used as a poison for centuries. The room tilted. You're saying? I'm saying, Dr. Webb interrupted gently, that the medication you've been taking contains doses of digitalis far exceeding therapeutic levels. You're not sick, Sharon. You're sick, Miss Ashford. You're being poisoned. Alara's hands began to shake. How long? Dr. Webb looked at the file. Based on the progression of your symptoms and the prescription records I could access. I believe it started 10 years ago, when you turned 12. 10 years, a decade of her life. Her entire adolescence spent feeling weak, feeling broken, feeling like a burden. And it had all been deliberate. The past 2 years, Dr. Webb continued, the dosage increased significantly, enough to cause the severe symptoms you've been experiencing, enough to make you appear terminally ill. Why? The word came out broken. But she knew why. Morgana had been patient. 10 years of slow poisoning, keeping Alara weak enough to control but alive enough to avoid suspicion. And then, when the time was right, when all the pieces were in place, she'd increased the dosage, making Alara sick enough to die, making her desperate enough to accept any solution, even marriage to a vampire king. If I go to Nightfall, Alara said slowly, I die. The will transfers everything to Morgana. Yes. And if I refuse to go? Dr. Webb was quiet for a long moment. She'll find another way, he finally said. The poison is already in your system. Without proper treatment, without detoxification. He shook his head. You have perhaps 3 months, maybe less. 3 months, 90 days. Alara laughed and the sound was ashes. So I'm dead either way. No, Dr. Webb leaned forward. Listen to me. You're young, your body is resilient. If you can stop taking the medications, if you can get away from here, there's a chance. Your heart can heal. It will take time, but it's possible. Get away where? Alara gestured to the locked door. She has guards watching my room. She controls everything. Then go to Nightfall. Alara stared at him. You just said if I go there, I'd die. I said if you go there, Morgana believes you'll die. Dr. Webb pulled a vial from his bag, clear liquid. This is pure activated charcoal suspension. It will help absorb the digitalis in your system. Start taking it now, 3 times daily. He pulled out another vial, this one filled with small white pills. Potassium supplements. The digitalis depletes your potassium levels, which makes your heart irregular. Take these twice daily. Why are you helping me? Alara whispered. Dr. Webb's hands stilled. His eyes grew distant. Your father was my friend, he said. When he married Morgana, I warned him. I saw what she was, what she wanted. He laughed it off. Said I was being paranoid. His voice roughened. When he died 2 years later, I knew, but I couldn't prove it. Wealthy women don't get accused of murder without ironclad evidence. She killed him? The same way she's been killing you. Slowly. Carefully. Dr. Webb pressed the vials into her hands. Go to Nightfall, Miss Ashford. Get away from her. And whatever happens there, whatever the Vampire King is, it cannot possibly be worse than what awaits you here. The carriage came at dawn, black lacquered wood, black horses, black curtains that blocked out the rising sun. Alara stood in the manor's entrance hall, watching servants load her trunks. 3 of them. Her entire life reduced to luggage. Morgana descended the main staircase, resplendent in morning violet, the widow's weeds she'd worn for Alara's father, repurposed now for her stepdaughter's living funeral. You look pale, Morgana observed. Did you sleep? No. Anxiety is natural, but you mustn't let it affect your health. The audacity of it. The sheer, breathtaking audacity. Alara had stopped taking the medications, poured them down the sink, started Dr. Webb's charcoal suspension and potassium supplements instead. Already her heart felt steadier. Or maybe that was hope. Maybe hope felt like a regular heartbeat. I'm sure the Vampire King will take excellent care of you, Morgana continued. They say his castle is beautiful, ancient, full of wonders. They also say his brides don't survive the winter, Alara replied. Morgana's smile was knife-thin. Then I suppose you should make the most of autumn. Vivian appeared at the top of the stairs. Still in her nightgown, golden hair tumbled around her shoulders. She looked like a Renaissance painting. Angels and innocence. Goodbye, little sister, she called down. Do write to us, if you can. The implication hung in the air. If you survive long enough to hold a pen. I will, Alara said. I'll write to you from Nightfall. I'll tell you all about the Vampire King, about his castle, about what it's like to be somewhere I'm not slowly poisoned. Vivian's smile froze. What did you say? You heard me. Morgana's hand shot out, gripping Alara's wrist, hard enough to bruise. Careful, Morgana hissed. You're already unwell. It would be a shame if you were too sick to travel. Alara met her stepmother's eyes. It would be a shame, she agreed, if I told the Vampire King exactly why I'm so sick. If I explained about the digitalis, about the 10 years of poisoning. I wonder what he'd think of that. Morgana went very still. You have no proof. Dr. Webb has my medical records, complete documentation of my treatment, every prescription, every dosage. It was a bluff. Mostly. Dr. Webb had records, but whether they'd be enough to convince anyone was another question. If anything happens to me, if I disappear conveniently at nightfall, he'll take them to the authorities. You're bluffing. Am I? Alara pulled her wrist free. I guess you'll find out. 3 months, you said? That's how long I have without treatment? Let's see if I make it that long. Let's see if the Vampire King is the monster you're hoping for. She walked to the carriage, her heart hammered. Not irregular now, just fast. Fear and fury and something that felt almost like power. A footman helped her inside. The interior was black velvet and silver fixtures, dark as a coffin. She settled onto the bench seat, arranging her gray skirts around her. Through the window, she watched Morgana standing in the doorway. Vivian had come down to join her. They stood together, stepmother and stepdaughter, framed in the manor's entrance like a portrait of grief. But Morgana's eyes weren't sad. They were calculating. The carriage jerked into motion. Ashford Manor receded. The only home Alara had ever known disappeared behind a curve in the road. She didn't look back. The journey took 3 days, north through farmland, through forests that grew darker and denser as they traveled, through villages where people crossed themselves when they saw the black carriage pass. The Vampire King's carriage. Death on wheels. Alara drank her charcoal suspension, took her potassium pills, felt her heartbeat grow steadier with each passing mile. The trembling in her hands eased. The fog in her mind cleared. She'd been poisoned for so long, she'd forgotten what healthy felt like. On the third evening, as the sun bled orange across the horizon, they crested a hill. Nightfall Castle rose before them. It should have been terrible, dark and menacing. Gothic horror made stone. Instead, it was beautiful. White marble towers caught the dying light and turned it gold. Windows glowed warm. Gardens spread out in terraced levels, green even as autumn painted the world rust and amber. Smoke rose from chimneys, carrying the scent of wood fire and something else. Bread. Someone was baking bread. The carriage rolled across a bridge, not drawbridge, just stone, arching over a river that ran clear and cold. Guards stood at attention, but they didn't look cruel. They looked professional, calm. The gates opened without a sound. The courtyard beyond was cobblestone and lantern light. Stable hands waited to tend the horses. Servants in black and silver livery stood ready. And at the top of the castle steps stood a man. Alara's breath caught. He was pale, paler than anyone she'd ever seen, as if he were carved from moonlight and marble. Dark hair threaded with silver at the temples. Tall, broad-shouldered. He wore black, simple and elegant, no ornamentation except a silver ring on his right hand. The Vampire King, Caspian Devereaux. 400 years old, legend said, ancient when her great-grandparents were born, powerful enough to level cities, dangerous enough that 3 kingdoms had signed treaties promising never to march on nightfall. He descended the steps as the carriage stopped. A footman opened the door. Alara gathered her courage and stepped out. Her legs trembled. From the journey, she told herself. Not fear. The Vampire King stopped 3 paces away, close enough to speak, far enough to give her space. His eyes were gray, storm cloud gray, and when they met hers, they weren't cold, they were careful. Lady Alara Ashford, he said. His voice was quiet, deep but gentle, like distant thunder. Welcome to nightfall. Alara's prepared speech evaporated. All her planned words about terms and agreements and self-preservation disappeared, because the Vampire King, the monster, the legend, the creature mothers used to frighten children into obedience, was looking at her like she was something precious, something breakable, something worth protecting. Your Majesty, she managed. Caspian, he corrected, please. We are to be married. Formality seems excessive. Married, the word hung between them. I know this is not what you wanted, Caspian continued. I know you were sent here against your will. I know... He paused, something flickering across his expression. I know you're afraid. Alara lifted her chin. I'm not afraid of you. It was true, she'd spent the journey preparing to meet a monster, but the man before her didn't look monstrous. He looked tired. Ancient weariness lived in his eyes. You should be, Caspian said quietly. Most people are. Most people haven't lived with my stepmother. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. Come, he said. You must be exhausted from the journey. Your rooms are prepared. He offered his arm. Alara hesitated only a moment before taking it. His skin was cold through the fabric of his jacket, but his grip was steady. He led her up the steps slowly, matching her pace, not rushing despite the effort each stair cost her. The castle entrance hall stole her breath. Vaulted ceilings soared overhead, painted with murals of stars and seasons. Marble floors gleamed in candlelight. Tapestries covered the walls, rich colors depicting forests and mountains and cities she didn't recognize. Nightfall was built 4 centuries ago, Caspian said, when I was young and foolish and thought power meant fortress walls. It's beautiful. It's lonely. The admission seemed to surprise him. He stopped walking. Forgive me, he said. I'm not good at this, at making people feel welcome. I've spent too long alone. Alara studied him. The careful distance he maintained, the way he held himself, as if expecting rejection. How long, she asked. 150 years since I last had a guest who stayed more than a day. 150 years. Alara had been alive 22 years and felt ancient. She couldn't imagine a century and a half of solitude. Why, the question escaped before she could stop it. Why agree to marry? Why now? Caspian was quiet for a long moment. Because, he finally said, I am tired of being feared. I am tired of being alone. And when your stepmother's messenger came, offering you as a bride, he looked at her. I thought perhaps this was a chance. To be something other than the monster everyone believes me to be. You know Morgana wants me dead, Alara said bluntly. Yes. You know she expects you to kill me. Yes. And you agreed anyway? Caspian's expression shifted, sadness and something harder, determination. I agreed because I thought if I could give you sanctuary, if I could offer protection from whatever drove you into this arrangement, then perhaps we could both find what we needed. I need to not die. Then you and I are aligned in our goals. A woman appeared at the top of a curved staircase, elderly but elegant. Silver hair swept into an elaborate twist. She wore deep purple velvet and moved with the grace of someone who'd forgotten what it meant to age. Ah, Caspian said. Lady Serafina, my advisor. Keeper of his conscience, more like, Serafina corrected. She descended the stairs with a smile that reached her eyes. You must be Alara. Welcome, child. The word child should have been condescending. Instead, it felt warm. Come, Serafina said. Let me show you to your rooms. His Majesty can be dreadfully serious about hospitality when he's nervous. I'm not nervous, Caspian protested. You're terrified, Serafina said cheerfully. But that's healthy. It means you care. She swept Alara up the stairs before any further protest could be made. Don't mind him, Serafina said as they climbed. 400 years old, and he still hasn't learned how to talk to people without sounding like he's negotiating a treaty. He seems kind, Alara said carefully. He is. Serafina's expression sobered. Too kind for what the world has made him. Too gentle for the cruelty he's endured. She stopped at a doorway, hand on the ornate handle. He will not hurt you, Alara Ashford. Whatever else happens here, I promise you that. She opened the door. The room beyond was beautiful. Not opulent, just lovely. Cream walls and soft blue curtains, a bed with fresh linens, a fireplace where flames danced warm, a desk by the window, bookshelves lined one wall, filled with leather spines in a dozen languages. Your trunks will arrive shortly, Serafina said. Dinner is at 8, but if you'd prefer a tray in your room, simply ring the bell. No one will think less of you. Thank you. Serafina started to leave, then paused. That medication you were taking, she said quietly. Before you came here, you've stopped, haven't you? Alara froze. How did you? I'm old, child, and I've seen poison before. Serafina's eyes were kind but knowing. Whatever they were giving you, it's not here. You're safe now. Let your body heal. She left before Alara could respond. Alone, Alara walked to the window. The view overlooked the gardens. Twilight painted everything purple and gold. Below, she could see villagers on the road beyond the castle walls. Ordinary people going about ordinary lives. Not running in terror. Not fleeing the vampire king's shadow. Just living. Perhaps, Alara thought, everything they said about Nightfall was wrong. Perhaps the monster was the one she'd left behind. The wedding was small. No 200 witnesses. No grand cathedral. Just a chapel within the castle walls. Old stone and stained glass depicting seasons rather than saints. Alara wore cream silk. Simple, elegant. Nothing like the elaborate gown Morgana had suggested. This dress was hers. Her choice. Serafina had helped her dress, fingers gentle with buttons and laces. You don't have to do this, the older woman had said. Even now, even at the altar, you can say no. But Alara had shaken her head. If I say no, I go back to Ashford Manor, back to Morgana, back to the poison. There are other options, other places. Not for someone with no money, no family. Alara met Serafina's eyes in the mirror. This is my choice. Maybe the only real choice I've had in 10 years. Now she stood in the chapel, hands clasped around a small bouquet of late-blooming roses, white petals edged with frost. Caspian waited at the altar. He wore black, as always, but he'd added a silver chain at his throat, glinting in candlelight. His expression was solemn. The priest was human, elderly and kind-eyed. He spoke the ceremony in a language that sounded ancient, then repeated it in words Alara understood. Marriage is a bond, the priest said, not of ownership, not of obligation, but of choice. Each day, you choose each other. Each day, you build something new. Caspian took Alara's hand. His skin was still cold. She'd grown used to it in the 3 days since her arrival. The chill that lived in him, permanent as his pallor. I cannot promise you immortality, Caspian said quietly. I cannot promise you a life without pain. But I promise you this, you will never be harmed within these walls. You will never be controlled. You will never be made to feel lesser than you are. The words hit harder than expected. Alara's throat tightened. I promise, she whispered, to see you as you are. Not as legend says you should be. Not as fear has painted you. Just as you are. It wasn't traditional, but traditional vows seemed inadequate for whatever this was becoming. The priest blessed them, spoke words about mercy and choice, and the courage to be gentle in a harsh world. Then it was done. You may kiss, the priest began. No, Caspian interrupted gently. He looked at Alara. Only if you wish it. Alara's heart, still healing, still learning to beat without poison, stuttered. No one had ever asked her what she wished. She reached up, placed her hand against Caspian's cheek. His eyes widened. Then she kissed him. Brief, chaste, but real. When she pulled back, Caspian looked stunned. I wished it, Alara said simply. The wedding feast was quiet, just them and Serafina in a small dining room. Candles and wine and food Alara could barely taste through her nerves. You don't have to stay, Caspian said over dessert. In the same rooms as me, I mean. Serafina mentioned you might prefer your own wing of the castle. Alara set down her fork. What do you prefer? Caspian looked startled by the question. No one's asked me that in a very long time. I'm asking now. He was quiet, considering. I would like, he said carefully, for you to be close, not because I expect anything, but because this castle is very large and very empty, and I think I would sleep easier knowing you were near. Honest, vulnerable. Alara found herself smiling. Then I'll stay close. Relief crossed his face so quickly she almost missed it. Later, as Serafina showed her to rooms adjacent to Caspian's own chambers, Alara felt something shift in her chest. Not her heart, something deeper. For the first time in 10 years, she felt safe. There's a door between your room and his, Serafina said, pointing to a carved panel. It locks from your side. He'll never open it without permission. Alara touched the door, solid wood, warm beneath her palm. What if I want to open it, she asked. Serafina smiled. Then you open it, child. That's what choice means. Alone in her room, Alara changed into a nightgown. White cotton, simple and soft. She took her evening dose of charcoal suspension, swallowed her potassium pills. Then she sat at the window. Nightfall Castle stretched out below her, lamplight in windows, smoke from chimneys. In the distance, she could see lanterns moving along the northern road. What are those? She'd asked Caspian during dinner. Supply runs, he'd answered. We leave food and medicine where the villages will find them, anonymously. Why anonymously? Because if they knew the gifts came from me, fear would poison the generosity. Better they think it's from some benevolent stranger than from the monster in the castle. Alara had wanted to argue, to say he wasn't a monster, but she'd only known him 3 days. Still, 3 days with Caspian felt safer than 10 years with Morgana. A soft knock at the connecting door made her turn. Come in, she called. The door opened. Caspian stood in the doorway, still in his wedding clothes, but with his jacket removed. He looked younger somehow, less formal. I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed, he said. I do. Good. He started to leave, then stopped. Alara, about tomorrow. We don't have to. That is, I don't expect. He was terrible at this. Alara almost laughed. 400 years old and he couldn't finish a sentence about wedding nights. I know, she said, saving him. You've made it clear. No expectations, no obligations. Right. He looked relieved. But if you did want, if there's anything, Caspian, he stopped. If I want something, Alara said, I'll tell you. And I expect the same honesty from you. No more dancing around words. A slow smile crossed his face. Deal. After he left, Alara lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. 72 hours ago, she'd been standing in Ashford Manor, listening to Morgana sentence her to death. Now she was married to a vampire king who asked permission before kissing her. The world, it seemed, was full of surprises. Outside, lanterns continued their journey along the northern road, anonymous kindness in the dark. Alara closed her eyes and felt her heart beat steady and sure. For the first time in a decade, she fell asleep without fear. Alara woke to silence. Not the oppressive quiet of Ashford Manor, where servants moved like ghosts and even breathing felt too loud. This was different, peaceful, the kind of silence that held space for thought instead of crushing it. Dawn light filtered through her window, soft, golden. She'd slept through the entire night, no heart palpitations jerking her awake, no midnight panic that this breath might be her last. Just sleep, deep and dreamless and healing. The charcoal suspension sat on her bedside table. She took her morning dose. The liquid was gritty, unpleasant, but each swallow felt like rebellion, like taking back pieces of herself Morgana had stolen. A knock at her door. Come in, she called. A young woman entered carrying a breakfast tray. Human, not vampire, perhaps 19 or 20, with warm brown skin and kind eyes. Good morning, Your Majesty, the girl said, setting the tray on a small table near the window. I'm Anna. Lady Serafina thought you might prefer to breakfast in your room this morning. Your Majesty. The title felt foreign, wrong, like wearing someone else's skin. Just Alara, she said, please. Anna smiled. Lady Serafina said you'd say that. She also said to tell you that adjusting to titles takes time, and there's no shame in feeling uncomfortable in new crowns. Alara found herself smiling back. She's very wise. She's been with King Caspian for 70 years, Anna said, arranging silver covers over dishes. She says she remembers when he was still learning how to be gentle. Says it took him decades to stop flinching when people spoke kindly to him. The image struck Alara. Caspian, powerful and ancient, flinching from kindness like it might burn. What's he like? Alara asked. Really like? Anna paused, considering. Lonely, she said finally, but trying not to be. He walks the castle at night when he thinks everyone's asleep. Not pacing, just existing. Like he's practicing sharing space with the possibility of not being alone. It was the most honest thing anyone had said to Alara in years. Thank you, she whispered. Anna curtsied and left. Alone, Alara lifted the silver covers. Fresh bread still warm from the oven. Soft cheese and honey. Fruit that tasted like summer. She ate slowly, savoring each bite. Food tasted different without poison dulling her senses. Everything tasted different. Through her window, she could see the castle grounds waking. Gardeners tending autumn roses. Stable hands leading horses to pasture. Normal. Peaceful. Then she saw him, Caspian, walking along the northern path that led beyond the castle walls. He carried something, a large sack slung over one shoulder. Even from this distance, she could see the careful way he moved. Quiet, deliberate. Alara set down her cup. She dressed quickly. Simple gray wool, practical boots. Grabbed a shawl against the autumn chill. The castle halls were easier to navigate in daylight. She found her way down, through the main entrance, out into gardens touched with frost. Caspian had disappeared beyond the tree line. Alara followed. The path wound through a forest just beginning to surrender to winter. Leaves crunched beneath her feet, her breath misted in cold air. Her heart beat steady, though the exertion made it work. Ahead she heard voices. She slowed, moved quietly. Through the trees she saw a clearing, a small village, perhaps 15 cottages, smoke rising from chimneys. Children played in a common yard, their laughter bright against the gray morning. Caspian stood at the forest edge, just out of sight. He set down his sack, opened it. Inside, Alara could see loaves of bread, wheels of cheese, dried meat wrapped in cloth, medicine bottles. Step back into shadow. Alara watched step back into shadow. Alara watched him watch the village. His expression was gentle, sad, like someone looking at something precious they could never touch. A woman emerged from one of the cottages, older, gray-haired, carrying a basket. She walked to the forest edge, humming, stopped when she saw the supplies. For a moment, she just stood there. Then she looked into the forest, directly at the shadows where Caspian hid. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Whoever you are, thank you." She gathered the supplies and left. Caspian remained still for a long moment. Then he turned and found Alara standing on the path behind him. He didn't startle, just looked tired. "How long have you been there?" he asked. "Long enough." They walked back toward the castle in silence. The forest held its breath around them. "You do this every day?" Alara finally asked. "Most days, when supplies are needed." "They don't know it's you." "No," Caspian's voice was soft. "They think it's some traveling merchant, or perhaps the church from the next county over. Anyone but the Vampire King." "Why not tell them?" He stopped walking. "Because 400 years ago, I burned a village not unlike that one. Killed 43 people. I remember their names, their faces." His hands clenched at his sides. "I spent 2.5 centuries being exactly the monster they fear. And then I stopped. Realized what I'd become. Spent the next 150 years trying to be something different." "What changed?" Alara asked. 250 years of cruelty, then suddenly kindness. What happened?" Caspian looked at the sky, gray clouds gathering. "I met someone," he said, "a child, 10 years old. I'd attacked his village, killed his parents, left him with a scar across his face that would mark him forever." His voice dropped. "He should have hated me, should have sworn revenge. Instead, he looked at me and said, 'You're very sad. Monsters are usually sad.'" Alara's breath caught. A child said that? Children see truth that adults forget. Caspian started walking again. "He didn't forgive me, but he saw me, really saw me. Not the power or the legend or the fear, just the sadness underneath." "What happened to him?" "He grew up, became a scholar, wrote treatises on the nature of mercy and justice. Died peacefully at 93. Caspian's smile was faint and heartbroken. "I attended his funeral from the shadows. Watched his grandchildren lay him to rest. He'd lived a full life despite what I'd done to him." They reached the castle gates. "That's why you leave supplies anonymously," Alara said. "Because you don't believe you deserve gratitude." "I don't, but you do it anyway." "Yes." Alara studied him. This ancient creature who'd learned gentleness like a second language, who practiced kindness in shadows because he didn't believe he deserved the light. "I'd like to help," she said, "with the supply runs, if you'll let me." Caspian's eyes widened. "You don't have to. I want to." Something shifted in his expression. Hope and fear and careful, fragile possibility. "Tomorrow morning, then," he said quietly. "If you're certain." "I'm certain." That afternoon, Alara found the library. It was enormous. 3 stories of books, climbing toward a domed ceiling painted with constellations. Ladders on rails allowed access to higher shelves. Comfortable chairs clustered near fireplaces. Tables held maps and manuscripts and objects she couldn't identify. Serafina sat in a leather chair near a window, reading. She looked up when Alara entered. "Ah," the older woman said, "I wondered when you'd find this place. It's Caspian's sanctuary, has been for a century." Alara turned slowly, taking it all in. "I've never seen so many books." Caspian collects knowledge, languages, histories, sciences, everything he can learn about the world he once tried to conquer. Serafina marked her page and set the book aside. "He says understanding prevents cruelty, that ignorance was his first sin." Alara walked to the nearest shelf, ran her fingers along leather spines. Medical texts, anatomy, herbology, some in languages she recognized, others in scripts that looked ancient. "May I?" she asked. "This library belongs to Nightfall's queen now as much as its king," Serafina said. "Everything here is yours to explore." Queen. The word still felt like borrowed clothes. Alara pulled a medical text from the shelf, opened it carefully. The pages smelled of age and care. Diagrams of the human body, annotations in margins, handwritten in a script she recognized from documents she'd seen. Caspian's handwriting, notes about treatments, questions about dosages, careful observations about healing. "He taught himself medicine," Serafina said. "After he stopped killing, he wanted to learn how to save lives instead. Spent 50 years studying with healers across 3 continents." Alara traced one of the annotations. "He really did change. Change is the only constant in a life that long." Serafina stood, joints creaking slightly. Come, sit with me. I want to know about you. They settled into chairs near the fire. What do you want to know? Alara asked. Everything you're willing to tell, but particularly, Serafina's gaze sharpened, particularly about why you stopped taking your medications before coming here. Alara's hands tightened on the chair arms. How did you know? I'm old, child. 7 decades as a vampire. 7 before that as human. Serafina leaned forward. I've seen poison in all its forms. Your stepmother was killing you slowly. Digitalis, I suspect. Classic choice for inducing heart failure. 10 years, Alara whispered. She started when I was 12. Increased the dosage heavily these past 2 years. Serafina's expression hardened, and she sent you here expecting you'd die within weeks, either from the poison already in your system or from Caspian fulfilling the monster role everyone expects of him. Yes. Greedy, cruel woman. Serafina shook her head. But she underestimated 2 things. Your resilience and Caspian's fundamental decency. Alara couldn't finish the question. Heal? Serafina finished gently. Yes, your body is young, strong despite what was done to it. The charcoal will clear the digitalis. The potassium will stabilize your heart. In a few months, you'll barely remember what it felt like to struggle for breath. Relief crashed through Alara like a wave. A few months, she repeated, perhaps sooner. You're already looking better than when you arrived. Serafina smiled. Color in your cheeks, steadiness in your hands. Your heart is remembering how to beat without fighting poison. Alara pressed her palm to her chest, felt the rhythm beneath. Not perfect, not yet, but stronger. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. Thank yourself for having the courage to stop taking what was killing you. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, fire crackling, books breathing their paper and leather scent into warm air. May I ask you something? Alara finally said. Anything. Why do you stay? With Caspian, I mean. You're not bound to him. You could live anywhere. Serafina's smile turned soft. Because 70 years ago, I was dying. Plague. The humankind, not vampire. I had perhaps a week left. Caspian found me in a burned-out village where everyone else had already died. She looked into the fire. He gave me a choice. Die human and peaceful. Or live as vampire and see what comes next. You chose to live. I chose to stay with someone who offered choice instead of taking it, who treated my dying body with gentleness, who sat with me through the transformation and taught me how to exist in a new form without losing myself. Serafina met Alara's eyes. He gave me a second life. I chose to spend it helping him find a second chance at living. Understanding bloomed in Alara's chest. You're his family. We're each other's family. Found, not given. Built, not inherited. Serafina reached over and patted Alara's hand. And now you're part of that family too, whether you meant to be or not. The words settled into Alara like warmth. Family. She'd forgotten what that word could mean beyond obligation and cruelty. I'd like that, she whispered. Good, because Caspian desperately needs someone to see past the monster everyone else sees. And you, child, need someone to see past the weakness everyone else sees. Serafina stood. Now I believe dinner will be ready soon. And tonight Caspian plays the cello. He's quite talented. If you ask nicely, he might perform for you. She left Alara alone in the library, alone with books and firelight and the quiet knowledge that for the first time in a decade, someone saw her as more than a burden. The days settled into rhythm. Alara woke, took her treatments, joined Caspian for supply runs, studied in the library, felt her heart grow stronger with each sunrise. 1 week became 2. 2 became 4. She learned the castle's corridors, the servants' names, the best spots in the gardens for watching sunset. She learned that Caspian preferred silence to conversation, presence to words, that Serafina had a wicked sense of humor beneath her dignity, that Anna dreamed of becoming a healer someday. She learned what safety felt like, what choice tasted like, what it meant to breathe without counting each breath as borrowed time. And then, 6 weeks after her arrival, everything changed. That night, Alara's heart betrayed her. She woke at midnight, chest tight, room spinning, heart hammering too fast, skipping beats, trying to escape her ribs. Panic rose like floodwater. This was familiar. This was the terror that had defined her existence for 10 years. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her hand found the bell rope by her bed, pulled weakly. Somewhere distant, a bell chimed. Footsteps in the hallway, running. Her door flew open. Caspian stood there, still dressed, hair disheveled like he'd been pacing. Alara, he said, and the fear in his voice cut through her panic. He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopped at her bedside. May I come closer? He asked. Even now, even in crisis. He asked. Yes, she gasped. He knelt beside the bed so his face was level with hers. Not looming, not dominating, just present. Look at me, he said quietly. Just look at me. Breathe with me. She fixed her eyes on his, gray as storm clouds, steady. He demonstrated. Slow breath. She tried, managed a shaky inhale. Out, he breathed. She exhaled. Again, in. They breathed together. The door opened again. A healer rushed in carrying a medical bag. Human, efficient, kind-faced. She worked quickly. Checked Alara's pulse. Listened to her heart. Mixed something that smelled medicinal. Drink this, the healer said. It will help stabilize your rhythm. Alara drank, bitter liquid coating her throat. Caspian stayed kneeling beside her, breathing slow and steady, an anchor. Gradually, her heart remembered its job. The panic receded like tide pulling back from shore. The healer finished her examination. The digitalis is still in her system, she told Caspian. It will take time to fully clear. Episodes like this may happen for a few more weeks, but they'll become less frequent, less severe. She gave Caspian instructions, left medications, then she departed, leaving them alone. Alara lay exhausted. Tears she hadn't realized she'd shed cooled on her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. For what? For being broken. Caspian's expression shifted, something fierce and protective. You're not broken, he said. You're healing. There's a difference. He stood to leave. Wait, Alara said. He stopped. Could you stay? Just until I fall asleep? Caspian looked uncertain. I don't want to. Please. He pulled a chair close to her bedside. Sat, kept his hands carefully in his lap. I'll stay as long as you need. Alara closed her eyes, focused on breathing, on the sound of him in the chair beside her. Solid, real, safe. Tell me something, she murmured. Anything. I need to think about something other than my heart. Silence for a moment. Then Caspian's voice, soft in the darkness. I learned to play cello 50 years ago. I thought music might help me understand gentleness. How to create something beautiful instead of destroying. He paused. I'm still not very good, but it helps. When the castle feels too big and too empty, I play. I heard you, Alara said. My first night here. Through the walls. I'm sorry if it disturbed you. It didn't. It was lovely. Another pause. Would you like me to play for you sometime? He asked. Not now, when you're, well, if you'd like me, well. I would like that very much. She felt sleep pulling at her. Gentle. No longer terrifying. Caspian? She whispered. Yes? Thank you for asking permission, even when I was panicking. His voice, when he answered, was rough. 400 years ago, I took what I wanted without asking. I hurt people because I could. I will never again touch someone without their consent, not even to help, especially not to help. Alara reached out, found his hand in the darkness. She didn't say anything, just held on. After a moment, his fingers curled around hers. Cold skin, careful grip. They stayed that way until she slept. Morning brought a visitor. Alara was in the library, researching something she'd noticed in one of Caspian's medical texts, when Anna appeared looking flustered. Your Majesty, there's a messenger at the gates, from the Ashford estate. Alara's stomach dropped. Send them away. I would, but they're carrying official papers from something called the Council of Seven. Anna wrung her hands. King Caspian is handling it, but they're asking for you specifically. The Council of Seven, Morgana's ultimate power. 7 wealthy families who controlled trade and law across 3 provinces. Morgana had married into one, used her position ruthlessly. Alara set down the book and stood. Take me to them. The throne room was cold, high ceilings, stone walls, a massive chair on a dais that looked more like judgment than welcome. Caspian sat there now, not lounging, sitting straight, every inch the king. Before him stood a man Alara recognized, Lord Thaddeus Crane, one of the council's senior members. 60 years old and sharp as winter. He wore black and silver, formal and intimidating. Ah, Thaddeus said as Alara entered. The bride herself, how lovely. His smile was oil-slick, false and dangerous. Lord Crane, Alara said evenly, what brings you to Nightfall? Concern for your well-being, my dear. He pulled a scroll from his coat. Your stepmother sent word that you were unwell. Dying, in fact. She fears the Vampire King's magic may not be sufficient to save you. How thoughtful of her to care, Alara said dryly. Thaddeus ignored the sarcasm. The council has taken an interest in your situation. We have a proposal. Caspian's eyes narrowed. What kind of proposal? Thaddeus unrolled the scroll. King Caspian, your blood is legendary. Stories say it can heal any ailment, cure any disease. He looked up. The council requests a small vial of your blood to heal young Alara. In exchange, we will ensure certain trade agreements remain favorable to nightfall. The room temperature seemed to drop. You want my blood, Caspian said slowly. Just a vial. Surely a small price for a wife's life. Alara saw it then. The trap. Morgana hadn't just sold her to a vampire hoping she'd die. She'd sold her to the council as bait. Get Alara to nightfall. Use her illness to extract Caspian's blood. Blood that could be studied, replicated, weaponized. No, Caspian said. Thaddeus raised an eyebrow. No, you'd let your bride die? My bride is healing quite well without magical intervention, Caspian replied. And I don't give my blood to anyone who asks, particularly not to council members with unclear intentions. Unclear intentions? Thaddeus's smile sharpened. Let me be clear then. If you refuse, the council will have no choice but to reconsider our peace treaty. Nightfall exists on sufferance, your majesty. We allow you your castle and your lands because you pose no threat, but a vampire king who won't cooperate, a threat, barely veiled, attack us and will attack you. Alara stepped forward and, Lord Crane, she said, how much did my stepmothers pay you? Thaddeus's expression flickered. I beg your pardon? For this performance, this barely disguised extortion attempt. How much did Morgana offer to get Caspian's blood for her? I don't know what She told you I was dying. She probably showed you medical records. Explained how the Vampire King's magic blood could save me. Alara's voice hardened. But she didn't tell you why I was dying, did she? Silence. I was poisoned, Alara said, for 10 years. Digitalis, slowly administered to create the appearance of heart failure. Morgana did it deliberately, to control me, and when she ran out of uses for me, she sent me here, hoping either I'd die naturally or Caspian would kill me. Either way, she inherits. Thaddeus's face went carefully blank. That's quite an accusation. It's quite a truth. Alara pulled a folded paper from her pocket. Dr. Webb's documentation. She'd kept it close. I have medical evidence, complete records of my treatment, dosage increases that far exceed therapeutic levels. If you'd like, I can have it verified by neutral physicians. That won't be necessary. Oh, but it is necessary, Alara interrupted, because the council has just attempted to extort blood from a sovereign king based on false pretenses, based on a manufactured illness, based on my stepmother's lies. She stepped closer to Thaddeus. Morgana told you I'd be dead by now. She told you Caspian would be desperate to save me. She told you he'd do anything, give anything. Alara's smile was sharp. She didn't account for me surviving, for me seeing through her scheme, for me having evidence. Thaddeus's jaw tightened. Lady Morgana is a respected member of... Lady Morgana is a murderer who poisoned her stepdaughter and tried to use the council as accomplices. Alara crossed her arms. Now you have a choice, Lord Crane. You can leave Nightfall peacefully. You can tell the council you were misinformed, or I can send copies of my medical records to every noble house in 3 provinces and let them know the council attempted to orchestrate blood theft from the Vampire King. You're bluffing. Try me. They stared at each other. Caspian watched from his throne, utterly still. Finally, Thaddeus rolled up his scroll. It seems there's been a misunderstanding, he said stiffly. It seems there has, Alara agreed. I'll inform the council of the situation. You do that. Thaddeus bowed, stiff, formal. Your Majesty, Lady Alara. He left. The throne room doors closed behind him with an echoing boom. Alara's knees went weak. She sat down hard on the nearest bench. Caspian descended from the throne, sat beside her. That was impressive, he said quietly. That was terrifying. You faced down a council lord and threatened to destroy your stepmother's reputation. He almost smiled. Impressive and terrifying can coexist. Alara laughed. It came out shaky. I thought I was going to faint. You didn't. Only because fear kept me upright. They sat in silence for a moment. He'll go back to the council, Alara said. He'll tell them what I said. And Morgana, Will face questions, Caspian finished. At minimum. If your evidence is solid, she'll face far worse. Good. But fear curled in Alara's stomach. Morgana wouldn't take exposure quietly. She'd fight, scheme, find some way to destroy what she couldn't control. She'll come, Ilara whispered. Eventually. She'll come here and she'll find Nightfall defended, Caspian interrupted. And you protected. No one enters this castle without permission. No one threatens what's mine. What's mine? The possessiveness should have frightened her. Instead, it felt like safety. I don't need you to fight my battles, Ilara said. I know. You proved that just now. Caspian looked at her. But you shouldn't have to fight alone. Something warm bloomed in Alara's chest. Not attraction, not yet. Just belonging. Thank you, she whispered. Caspian stood, offered his hand. Come, I believe Serafina mentioned something about teaching you the castle's defensive layouts. Just in case. Alara took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. Just in case turned out to mean 3 hours of walking castle ramparts and learning where guards station and how the warning bells worked. But Alara didn't mind. For the first time in her life, she was learning to defend instead of simply endure. And that, she thought, made all the difference. 8 weeks after Lord Thaddeus's visit, the plague arrived. Not at Nightfall's gates, in the villages beyond. Alara heard about it from Anna, who'd heard from the market traders, who'd heard from the refugees fleeing north. Young vampires. Children mostly. Burning with fever, skin turning ash gray, hearts slowing until they simply stopped. 15 dead in 2 weeks. No cure, no pattern, no explanation. The council sent another messenger. This time they didn't ask for blood. They demanded proof of value. The messenger was a woman, Lady Isara Voss, 35 and beautiful in a calculated way. Sharp cheekbones, sharper eyes. She wore council black and spoke with the precision of someone used to being obeyed. King Caspian, she said, standing in the throne room with papers clutched in gloved hands. The council has reconsidered the terms of peace between Nightfall and the 7 provinces. Ilara stood beside Caspian's throne. She'd insisted. If the council wanted to threaten, she'd witness it. Reconsidered how? Caspian asked. His voice was winter ice. Your bride made serious accusations against Lady Morgana Ashford. She provided evidence of poisoning, of attempted murder. Izara's smile was thin. The council investigated. The evidence is compelling. Hope flared in Alara's chest. So Morgana will face justice? Eventually, after proper trials, due process. Izara waved a dismissive hand. But that's not why I'm here. The accusations have created a problem. If a council member can attempt to use Nightfall as a tool for murder, it raises questions about this alliance. About whether we can trust a vampire king who'd accept a poisoned bride. I didn't know she was poisoned, Caspian said quietly. Didn't you? Isara cocked her head. You're 400 years old. You can hear heartbeats from across a room. And you expect us to believe you didn't notice something was wrong with Alara? Silence. Alara's hands clenched. What do you want? She asked. Isara turned to her. Proof that this marriage serves a purpose beyond Morgana's scheme. Proof that you, Alara Ashford, have value to Nightfall, value to the council. I'm not a commodity to be appraised. Aren't you? Isara's smile sharpened. You were sold to the Vampire King like livestock. Your stepmother literally put a price on your head. Now we're simply asking you to justify that price. Rage burned in Alara's throat. Caspian stood. Lady Isara, he said, voice dropping to something dangerous. You will speak to my wife with respect, or you will leave. I'll speak however I wish. The council holds your treaty, your peace, your ability to exist without 3 armies marching on this castle. Isara pulled a document from her coat. Here are our terms. Simple, clear. Solve the Crimson Plague, the disease killing vampire children across the northern territories. You have 15 days. If you succeed, the treaty stands. If you fail, she let the threat hang. If we fail, Alara pressed, the council will reconsider whether Nightfall deserves to exist at all. Isara set the document on the throne steps, turned, left without another word. The doors boomed shut. Alara's knees went weak. 15 days, she whispered. To solve a plague that's killed vampires for 15 years, Caspian added. His voice was hollow. A plague no healer, no scholar, no physician has been able to cure or explain. Serafina appeared from the shadows where she'd been listening. It's impossible, she said quietly. They know it's impossible. This isn't a test. It's an execution with extra steps. Alara looked at the document on the steps. Official seals, legal language, a death sentence wrapped in bureaucracy. No, she said. Both Caspian and Serafina turned to her. No, Caspian repeated. I won't accept impossible. Alara walked to the document, picked it up, read through the terms. They want proof of value? Fine. I'll give them proof. Alara, Caspian, I've spent 10 years being told I was worthless, being poisoned, being made to feel like a burden. She looked at him. I'm done accepting other people's definitions of what I can and cannot do. Something shifted in his expression. Pride mixed with fear. What do you need, he asked. Access to your library, your medical texts, and I want to visit the villages, see the sick children myself. That's dangerous. If the plague is contagious, then I'll be careful. Alara folded the document. 15 days. We start now. The first village was small, 20 cottages clustered around a central well, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where tragedy touched all equally. Alara arrived in a covered wagon. Anna drove. Serafina came as guard and witness. The village elder met them in the square, an old man, human, with eyes that had seen too much loss. Lady Alara, he said, and his voice cracked, you came. I came. He led them to a cottage at the village edge. Inside, the air smelled of sickness and fear. 3 children lay on cots. Vampire children, the youngest perhaps 5 years old in appearance, the oldest maybe 12. All 3 burned with fever. Their skin had that terrible gray cast. Their breathing was shallow. A woman sat beside them, their mother. She looked up when Alara entered. Hope and despair warred in her expression. Can you help them? She whispered. Alara knelt beside the youngest child, a girl with dark curls and eyes that struggled to focus. I'll try, Alara promised. She examined each child carefully, felt their foreheads, checked their pulses, asked questions. How long had they been sick? 8 days. When did symptoms start? Suddenly, no warning. What had they eaten? Drunk? The usual. Water from the well, food from their garden. Were others sick? Only vampire children. Never human. Alara filed each answer away. Then she asked permission to take samples, blood, saliva, a cup of water from the well. The mother agreed desperately. They visited 2 more villages that day. The pattern repeated. Always vampire children. Always the same symptoms. Always starting suddenly. By evening, Alara's head ached with information that refused to form patterns. Back at nightfall, she spread her samples across a library table. Caspian found her there at midnight, surrounded by medical texts and notes. You should rest, he said gently. I should solve this. You've been working for 16 hours, and I have 14 days left. Alara didn't look up from the microscope she'd borrowed from the castle's medical wing. I won't waste time sleeping. Caspian pulled up a chair, sat. Tell me what you found. Nothing useful. The blood samples are clean. No bacteria, no virus. Nothing that explains fever and organ failure. Alara rubbed her eyes. It's like they're being poisoned, but there's no common source. Different villages, different water supplies, different food. Unless, Caspian said slowly, the poison isn't external. What do you mean? Vampires are sensitive to certain substances. Silver, holy water, blessed objects. He gestured to the samples. What if something in the environment is triggering a reaction? Something that's always been there, but only recently became concentrated enough to kill? Alara stared at him. Silver, she whispered. What? You said silver. She grabbed one of the water samples, held it up to lamplight. The villages all draw from different wells, but wells go deep, into the earth, into mineral deposits. Understanding dawned in Caspian's eyes. If there's silver in the water table, it wouldn't affect humans. We're not sensitive. But vampires, Alara was already moving, pulling down chemistry texts. We need to test the water. All of it, from every affected village. They worked through the night. Serafina joined them. Then Anna. Then 3 more castle scholars who'd heard whispers of the mystery. By dawn, they had an answer. Every water sample contained trace amounts of silver, not enough to be visible, not enough to harm humans, but enough consumed daily over weeks to poison vampire children whose young bodies couldn't process the metal. It's not a plague, Alara said, staring at the test results. It's environmental poisoning. The silver deposits are leaching into groundwater. How do we fix it? Serafina asked. Filtration. We need to filter the water before it's consumed. Alara was already sketching designs. Charcoal, sand, specific minerals that bind to silver and remove it. Will it save the children already sick? Caspian asked quietly. Alara's hands stilled. I don't know. The damage is already done, but if we stop the source, she looked up. We can prevent more deaths. We can save the ones who aren't too far gone. It wasn't a cure, but it was hope. They had 10 days remaining. Vivian arrived on day 8. Alara was in the courtyard overseeing the construction of water filtration systems when her stepsister's carriage rolled through Nyack Falls gates. Rose-pink lacquer, white horses. Everything Vivian did was performance. She stepped out wearing cream silk and diamonds. Her golden hair caught sunlight like a halo. Alara, she called, voice carrying across the courtyard. Dear sister, you look so busy. Alara's hands were dirty from working with charcoal and sand. Her dress was gray wool, practical and stained. Her hair had escaped its pins hours ago. She looked nothing like a queen. Vivian looked triumphant. What are you doing here? Alara asked. Mother sent me to check on you. Vivian picked her way across the courtyard, avoiding mud with exaggerated care. She's worried. The council is asking such difficult questions, making such demands. Morgana's worried about herself, not me. Can't she be worried about both? Vivian's smile was sugar-sweet. She only wants what's best for you. She poisoned me for 10 years. Allegedly. Vivian examined her nails. Perfect. Manicured. You made accusations, provided some questionable documents, but where's the proof? Dr. Webb testified. Dr. Webb is elderly and increasingly fragile. His testimony is suspect. Vivian looked up. Mother, meanwhile, has the support of 6 council families, including the Voss family. Lady Asara spoke quite highly of Mother's charitable work. The pieces clicked together. Morgana bought Asara, Alara said flatly. Bought is such an ugly word. Cultivated an alliance. Vivian walked closer. The council isn't going to punish Mother. They're going to bury your accusations and move forward. Not if I solve the plague. About that, Vivian glanced at the filtration systems. Clever. Building little water filters, playing at being useful. Her voice hardened. But the council wants a cure, Alara. A magical fix. Vampire blood that heals everything. Not engineering projects. The plague is silver poisoning. Filters fix silver poisoning. And what about the children already dying? The ones too far gone? Vivian's smile turned cruel. You can't save them. You'll fail. And when you fail, the council will dissolve the treaty. They'll take Nightfall apart stone by stone. And you, dear, broken, useless you, will have proven you're exactly as worthless as Mother always said. Something cold and sharp settled in Alara's chest. Get out. Excuse me? Get out of my castle, now. Vivian laughed. Your castle? You've been here 10 weeks. You're playing dress-up in a dead woman's role. I'm Queen of Nightfall. These are my lands, my people, and you are not welcome here. I'm family. You're nothing to me. Alara stepped forward. You stood by while Morgana poisoned me. You laughed while I struggled to breathe. You called me worthless every day for 10 years. Because you are worthless. No, Alara's voice was steel. I'm not. I'm the woman who discovered what killed those children. I'm the woman who designed the cure. I'm the woman who will save lives while you do nothing but look pretty and mock people. Vivian's face flushed. You think you're better than me? You think marrying a monster makes you special? I think, Alara said quietly, that being kind makes me better than you. Being useful makes me better. Choosing to help instead of harm, that makes me better. She turned to the guards. Escort Lady Vivian to the gates. She's leaving. You can't. I can. And I am. Vivian was led away, sputtering protests. Alara returned to her work. Her hands shook, but she kept building. On day 15, Alara stood before the council. Not in Nightfall. They demanded she come to them. To Council Hall in the capital city, where 7 families held court in past judgment. Caspian stood beside her, Serafina on her other side. The council sat in high-backed chairs on a raised dais. 7 faces. 6 she didn't know, 1 she recognized. Lady Asara Voss, smiling. Lady Alara, said the eldest council member. Lord Matthias Gray, 70 years old and sharp as broken glass. You stand before us to present your solution to the Crimson Plague. I do. The terms were clear. A cure, not a treatment, not a theory. Can you cure the children already dying? Alara's throat tightened. No, she admitted. I can't cure them, but I can save the ones who haven't progressed too far, and I can prevent any more deaths. Murmurs rippled through the council. That's not what we asked for, Isara said sweetly. No, but it's what was possible. Elara pulled out her documentation. Water samples, test results, filtration designs. The Crimson Plague isn't a disease, it's silver poisoning. The water table in northern territories contains high concentrations of silver. Humans aren't affected, but vampires, especially young vampires, can't process it. It accumulates in their systems until their organs fail. She laid out the evidence methodically. I've installed filtration systems in 8 villages. The water test's clean now. The children who were early stage sick are recovering. No new cases have appeared in 12 days. Lord Matthias examined the documents. You discovered this how? Research, testing, observation. Alara hesitated, then added, and personal experience with poisoning. Isara's smile vanished. What personal experience? I was poisoned for 10 years, digitalis. It made my heart weak, unreliable. Alara's voice steadied, but that weakness made me sensitive to things others miss. Changes in heartbeat, subtle symptoms. My body learned to notice what was killing it. She gestured to the water samples. When I examined the sick children, something felt familiar. The way their hearts struggled, the pattern of organ failure. It reminded me of my own symptoms. She looked at the council. Weakness isn't always useless. Sometimes it teaches you things strength never could. Silence filled the hall. Lord Matthias set down the documents. You haven't cured anyone, he said, but you've saved villages, prevented an epidemic, identified a threat that's existed for 15 years and no one else caught. Yes, that's acceptable. Isara stood. Acceptable? My lord, the terms were clear. A cure, she failed. She succeeded in saving lives, another council member interjected. Lady Helena Cross, middle-aged and pragmatic. Isn't that what matters? The terms, Lord Matthias interrupted, were set as a test. She passed. I vote to uphold Night It Falls Treaty. As do I, Lady Helena said. 3 more council members agreed. Isara's face went white. This is absurd. She's shown nothing but basic competence. She's shown more competence than anyone else, Lord Matthias said coldly. Including you, Lady Isara. I've reviewed your recent financial records. Interesting how you've received 3 large payments from the Ashford estate in the past month. Isara went very still. I don't know what you're implying. I'm implying you've been bought, that you attempted to use your position to punish Alara on Morgana Ashford's behalf. He looked at the other council members. I move to investigate Lady Isara's conduct and to officially charge Morgana Ashford with attempted murder, conspiracy, and corruption of a council member. Seconded, Lady Helena said. 5 votes in favor. Isara stood frozen as guards approached her seat. This isn't over, she hissed at Alara. Yes, Alara said quietly. It is. As guards escorted Isara away, Lord Matthias descended from the dais. Lady Alara, King Caspian. He bowed slightly. Nightfall's treaty is upheld, with our thanks for your service to the Northern Territories. He held out a small wooden box. Alara opened it. Inside, on black velvet, lay a silver medallion. Intricate engraving. Beautiful. The healer's crest, Lord Matthias said. Last awarded 200 years ago. It recognizes those who save lives through wisdom and innovation. He met Alara's eyes. Wear it well, Your Majesty. Morgana arrived at Nightfall 3 days later, not with an invitation, with 50 mercenaries. They came at dawn, armed, angry, led by Morgana herself, resplendent in black velvet, riding a white horse like some avenging angel. Alara was in the gardens when the alarm bells rang. She ran to the walls, looked down at the force arrayed before the gates. Her stepmother stared up at her. Alara, Morgana called, come down, come home. You've made your point. I'm not coming down, and I am home. You're a prisoner in a monster's castle. I'm a queen in my own right. Morgana's expression hardened. The council has made accusations, lies, slander based on forged documents. I'm here to retrieve what's mine. I'm not yours. You're my stepdaughter, my responsibility, my property. I'm a married woman, I'm not your anything. Morgana gestured. The mercenaries readied weapons. Then I'll take you by force. Caspian appeared beside Alara on the wall, Serafina on her other side. You'll die trying, Caspian said. His voice carried across the courtyard. Cold. Absolute. Will I? Morgana smiled. You haven't killed anyone in 150 years, Vampire King. Everyone knows it. You've gone shifted, Geno. She spat the word like a curse. You won't fight 50 armed men to keep one sickly girl. Try me. But Morgana wasn't looking at Caspian anymore. She was looking at movement on the northern road. People were coming, villagers from the territories Alara had saved, hundreds of them, carrying farming tools and kitchen knives and anything that could be weaponized. At their head walked the woman from the first village, the mother whose children Alara had helped. You want our healer, Queen? The woman shouted at Morgana. You go through us first. More people arrived, vampire and human both, united. She saved our children, someone called. She gave us hope, another voice added. She's ours to protect now. Morgana's face went white, then red. You're choosing her? Over me? We're choosing kindness over cruelty, the village woman said. We're choosing someone who helps over someone who hurts. Morgana's control shattered. She's nothing. She's weak, defective. I had to poison her for years just to make her controllable. The courtyard went silent. Even the mercenaries looked shocked. What did you say? Lord Matthias appeared on horseback, flanked by council guards. He must have followed Morgana. Did you just confess to poisoning your stepdaughter? Morgana realized her mistake too late. You meant you poisoned a child for 10 years. Lord Matthias's voice was ice. You just admitted it, before witnesses. She's lying about everything else. She forged those medical records. Did she forge your confession? Ilara called down. The one you just made? In front of 500 people? Morgana looked around wildly. Faces stared back, horrified, disgusted. Even her own mercenaries were backing away. You don't understand, Morgana said desperately. I had to control her. She would have taken everything. The estate, the fortune. It was mine. It should have been mine. It was hers, Alara said quietly. My mother left it to me. My father wanted me to have it. You married him for his money and killed him when he wouldn't give it to you. Prove it. I can. Dr. Webb stepped forward from the crowd, old, trembling, but determined. I have medical records, he said, from Lord Ashford's final illness. The symptoms matched digitalis poisoning exactly. I suspected at the time, but I was afraid. He looked at Alara. I'm not afraid anymore. Morgana's face crumpled. You can't do this. I'm a council member's widow. I have rights. You have the right to a trial, Lord Matthias said, where you'll be charged with 2 counts of attempted murder. 1 count of successful murder, conspiracy, fraud, and corruption. He gestured to his guards. Arrest her. Morgana tried to run. She made it 3 steps before guards caught her. She screamed, fought, cursed. They dragged her toward a prison wagon. As she passed below the wall where Alara stood, Morgana looked up one last time. You were supposed to die, she said. You were supposed to be too weak to fight back. I was, Alara replied. But you taught me something, Morgana. You taught me that surviving poison makes you immune to smaller cruelties. You made me strong by trying to keep me weak. Morgana was loaded into the wagon. The doors slammed shut. Alara watched the wagon roll away until it disappeared. Then she turned and walked into Caspian's arms. He held her gently, carefully. It's over, he whispered. It's over, she agreed. 3 months later, winter had come to nightfall. Snow covered the gardens in pristine white. Icicles hung from tower ledges like crystal tears. The world was quiet and clean and new. Alara stood in the great hall watching children play. Not vampire children, not human children. Both. 15 of them, ages ranging from 5 to 14, orphans, children who'd lost parents to illness or war or simple bad luck. Children Nightfall had taken in and given home. Anna appeared with a warm smile. Your Majesty, the new water filtration system in the East Wing is working perfectly. Good, Alara accepted the report. And the children's health? All improving. Even little Marcus, who was so sick we feared. Anna's voice caught. He's playing with the others now, laughing. Alara looked across the hall. A small boy, perhaps 6 years old, vampire with dark curls, was giggling as he chased a human girl around a pile of cushions. 3 months ago, he'd been dying. Now he lived. Serafina appeared in deep purple velvet. The council sent word, she said. Morgana's trial concluded. Guilty on all counts, life imprisonment. Vivian has been exiled, and Lady Azara was stripped of her position. Justice. It didn't feel like triumph, just settled. Caspian entered, shaking snow from his dark coat. He'd been out doing supply runs, even in winter. He saw Alara and his entire expression softened. "Hello," he said quietly. "Hello." Their ritual, simple greetings that meant everything. "The villagers asked me to give you this." He held out a letter, simple parchment, sealed with wax. Alara opened it. Inside, in careful handwriting, "Thank you for seeing us. Thank you for caring. Thank you for saving our children." Signed by 43 village elders. "They know," she whispered, "about the supplies, about you. They've chosen to thank me instead of fear me," Caspian said. "Because of you. We started it together." His hand found hers. "Speaking of impossible work," he said, "I have something to show you." He led her to the winter gardens. There, pushing through snow, something green grew. Winter lilies, not blooming yet, but living despite the cold. "We're like these flowers," Alara said. "We survived winters we shouldn't have." Caspian looked at her. "You're not the woman who arrived here 3 months ago." "No, that woman was afraid, dying." Alara met his eyes. "Now I'm the healer queen, someone who knows her value." "You always had value." "But I didn't know it, and that's what changed." Snow began falling. Caspian stood, offered his hand. "There's something I want to say." She stood beside him. "When I came here," Alara said, "I thought this would be the end. Instead, it was the beginning. You gave me safety, space to heal, permission to be more than what my stepmother made me. And you," Caspian said, "gave me hope, showed me I'm not the monster everyone believes." Alara stepped closer. "I love you," she said simply. For a moment, he just stared. Then he kissed her, deep, certain. When they broke apart, Caspian pressed his forehead to hers. "I've been alone for 150 years, he whispered. "I didn't think I'd ever feel this again. You deserve it. You deserve love and home and family. So do you. Then we'll deserve it together?" Inside the castle, children laughed. Serafina hummed. Anna prepared dinner. Outside, snow fell on winter lilies that refused to die. And Alara knew that she was no longer the girl sent to nightfall to be forgotten. She was the woman who'd chosen to stay. The woman who'd turned weakness into wisdom. The woman who'd discovered that the secret her heart had been hiding all along wasn't illness. It was strength.